Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to Welbeck Junction. The end of the last episode, we had completed the carcass to the room, and we'd left it in this state. So all the walls were painted. We'd got an insulated front piece which blocks off the garage door access. The floor had been insulated, and the chipboard floor was down. So with that room now solid and draft proof, it was time to move on and get in the supporting structure for the baseboards and where the railway is going to run. And we are going to use kitchen base units. Now, there's two reasons really why I wanted to use these. The first one is they're rock solid once you've got them anchored in properly. So they'll take a massive amount of weight. They're all nice and set square out the box, so to speak, once you've built them. And they join together really well. So what they'll do is give us an incredibly strong foundation as well as loads of integrated storage. So a lot of the railways that I see, if you build them with lengths of timber, you create a space underneath, but that space isn't always tidy. You have joists in the way, you have leg supports in the way. So I thought, well, if I go for kitchen units, it's going to give me some proper storage solutions, and it's also going to just look a lot tidier at the end of the day. So that's the first reason. The second reason is, if and when the railway ever moves, the modular boards that are going to sit on top of this will come away. These units can then be separated and can be moved and reinstalled in the next location. So those were the two main reasons why I wanted to use the kitchen units. With using kitchen units, of course, there is a couple of things to bear in mind. They can be quite expensive, or a bit more expensive than buying timber. However, when you're buying them, you're buying exactly what you need. So you're not buying lengths of timber and then losing offcuts here, there and everywhere. So with that said, let's crack on. The first thing I did was to put together a couple of the kitchen units loosely and stand them in the space so that I could see what I was playing with. Now, I was always going to have a gap between the rear of the base units on the left hand side in the image to the wall to allow my incline to run behind the base units. The base units on the right, which you can see sat on top of some timber, that is going to be the level for my fiddle yard. So they're not going to sit on legs, they're going to sit on the wooden battens. Behind them there will also be a similar gap, but there won't be an incline running behind those. The baseboards will just butt up to the wall. So what I've done there is I've run a couple of CSL timbers along the floor on the right hand side. The kitchen units will sit on top of those, and that will be the gap to the floor. The left hand side are some units on legs. Now those legs will be adjusted to the right height so that the fiddle yard runs round on a 3% gradient up to the top of the level of those base units. So that will be incline 1, or the first incline out of the fiddle yard up to the top of the baseboard level. A bit of construction later, I've got the far side base units in, which will support the fiddle yard. So moving from right to left, that's 1,000 mil unit with then a stubby 125 unit, and then two more 1,000s beyond that, which make up the length that I want in that space. To the far left hand side, where you can see the little wooden batten, that is the same height as those base units, so that will support the rear end of the fiddle yard. Then moving all the way across to the right hand side, there is a gap between the end of the unit and the paint that you can just about see. So in that space there is where I'm going to have a couple of other bits and pieces tucked under the units that I just want space for. Looking at those units, they're sat on top of CSL timber, front and back, so they've got really solid support, and they are sitting 90 mil from the wall at the back. So the rear of the units are 90 mil away from the wall, so the front of the units, including that 90 mil gap, are 66 centimetres, or whatever that is in mil, 660 mil away from the wall. They are all joined together and they're all in a solid run. And then right up to the top left hand side, or on the left hand side of the image there, you can see the 1,000 mil unit, which is the end piece, and that is sat in front of the blocked off garage door. And again, that's 90 mil from that wall, and 660 mil from the wall to the front of the units. Here you can see the gap that I'm leaving, the 90mm between the wall and the rear of the base units. This is to allow the incline in and out of the fiddle yards to run around the rear of the base units. The base units will then be fitted against this batten to shore them up and give them some stability laterally whilst they're in place. Having got the fiddle yard side in, I've moved on and knocked up a unit of the first 1000mm unit on the left hand side. They're still fluid at the moment, these units, that I can move them around and tweak and adjust, but that is the first left hand side unit built and freestanding. Really starting to feel like it's coming together now. So that is a view from the other end. So I'm stood at the old garage door end looking back into the room. Fiddle yard units on the left, and now I've got 2000mm units in on the right hand side of the room. After another trip up to B&Q to get a couple more units, that is the left hand side in place. So down the left hand side I've got 2000mm units either side of a 115mm unit. That gives me exactly the right length from the front of the unit at the end in front of the old garage door back down to the door entrance into the rest of the house. So just looking at those units and how I've got them sat, they are 165mm from the floor, so the legs are jacked up to 165mm, and the fiddle yard, the top of the fiddle yard units are 130mm below the top of the rest of the units that run around the room. That gap will be bridged by risers that will run around in that 90mm gap I've got behind all of the units all the way around the room. So that void will be built up with the incline risers, and that will bring that fiddle yard up to the correct height. Once we're at the correct height at the top of the base units, it will then climb again, but we'll cover that as we go further into the build. Touching on the units that I've used the B&Q units. I think they're probably exactly the same units as you can get anywhere else. They seem to be going together okay, apart from the bolts that join them together, which have proven to be rubbish, is probably the polite way to put it, and I'll touch on that now. So my problem with the bolts that come with the units to fit them together is they are quite thin, the threads are quite fragile, and when you actually interlock them and screw them up, you haven't got that much bite. So when I was putting the units together and tightening them up, the bolts were literally just popping. The fix being a really simple bolt, couple of washers and nut on the other end, allow me to easily break them apart if needed. Looking from the garage end towards the rear of the room with the entrance exit to the right hand side, I've got two 250mm units side by side, again with the gap of 90mm between the wall and the edge of the first unit. I've then got a standard under-counter freezer set level with the front of those units. Again, at the rear of them is the 90mm gap, and then to the left of the freezer, but actually flush against the wall without any legs on it, is a 400mm unit tucked away at the back in that sort of alcove I've created there for the cat to have its food, etc. So that is what I'm calling the kitchen end, with all the base units in place. So that then completes the full circle of all the base units that are going to go into the room. So this is a perfect point to stop this episode. We've taken it from a bare room through to a room now with base units in, awaiting baseboards. So the next episode will be me cracking on with baseboards. So I hope you can join me then. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Ta-da!